Hello, everybody, and welcome to Capsule Cast Teams. As always, I am your host, DoorGuard, bringing you our special guest this week for Royals. And as well, I have my co-host back, Donut,
Hello.
the coach of Royals, Fat Happy,
Hey,
and of course, the ex-coach and current still active supporter, Buzz.
Hello.
So, gonna be a fun cast this week. Anything you guys want to say before we get sliding in?
looking forward to going through our team with you guys.
Should be a good time.
Alrighty then, let's get moving on to kind of your title card here. So, if I'm happy, I'll kind of let you take this away. Explain kind of what is Royals, what makes up Royals, who are you guys?
Yeah, here on Royals, we are the team made up of all the, well, it's in the name, but all the royalty in the league, all the lords, kings, princes, the emperors, half of which are Vegetas. But yeah,
Yeah, pretty simple premise that you guys have built a legacy off of. Is there anything you wanted to add to that, Buzz?
Uh, Not really. That about sums up the team. We're also the one team in the league right now on the stat sheet that get our special royal titles assigned with our character names.
True. Very
it is true. It is.
Yeah, I think another thing that's of noteworthy that we'll go into detail later is just being kind of a newer team to the overall longevity of the season. So you guys are still relatively young in terms of that, but old-time supporters, correct?
Yeah, I've been following the league for, I think, season 5, 6, or something like that. Only became an active supporter after in this newest season.
And what about you,
Uh,
Buzz?
I was the former coach of the Saiyans before they got changed over to Kaiju, so I was with them for 3 seasons, 2 as coach.
So yeah, certainly some longevity and experience on a relatively new team, but man, a team of some interesting characters. Donut, did you have anything to add on kind of what Royals is perceived to you as a fellow coach, I guess?
Fellow coach, a scary as hell team. Um, just straight up. When I was in the division with them last season, they were the one that had settled the most of any team in one division, as the biggest threat. So I have a strong lineup of characters, and I was definitely true this season as well.
Yeah, certainly has been an interesting transition for being a new team. So going on to some of the details there, as said before, this is they had their first season team last season. The 2020 season was the first time they've existed. So they've had no real previous team to latch onto. You could maybe say Majins because two of their guys are Majins, but overall they're a very new and unique team with the variety they have, which has been an awesome part of them. Unfortunately, for only having one season, they failed to qualify for playoffs, so they have a 0% playoff record. Hoping that will change, I assume, is they're hoping to bounce quite back and turn it into maybe a second season title. And for only having been in for one season, they also is one of the teams that had multiple elites during the main season. Deborah and Majin Vegeta come into name quite early on. So overall, pretty good way to start it off, and they're already one of the teams that have really experimented with the trades and loans. So, yeah, if I'm happy, you want to go over kind of how it was for the first season, maybe some highlights and kind of what you guys are working towards.
Yeah, I mean, we struggled a bit at the start of the season. I felt we hadn't really solidified, or we hadn't really decided fully on our builds for Deborah and Slug and Pilaf. Where obviously Majin Vegeta is, or was Majin Vegeta, and still is. But for both, specifically Deborah, we had him on an attack build at the start of the season. Didn't really work out well. Slug was on a defense build. Didn't really work out that well. And Pilaf was on a super build. And that also didn't really work out all that well. It was only about midway through the season that we really hit our stride by changing up some of the builds. I don't know if Buzz has any more insight.
Um, I think mostly what he said was right there at the beginning of the season. We were still throwing builds around a lot of places. Also experimenting with who can start, who's better later on in the lineup. So definitely took some build up. I'd say the biggest takeaway I had is that we got Pilaf doing really well at the end of the season, and we were quite happy with that. And going into this season, we wanted to try to make our roster more consistent. That was mostly our goal. We weren't really looking for the super highs, not trying to chase Deborah being able to repeat an elite performance, but we just wanted to make sure that every match our team went into, they could do their part. And that would be about my piece for that. If anyone else has anything they would like to speak on.
Yeah, Donut, do you have any kind of comments? Obviously, you were in their same division, and you already said they were a scary team.
Yeah.
But based off their first team, what do you think of the whole, like, how they did?
I thought they did very well for the first season, right? They were 8-7, so solid record right there. Most divisions that did to playoffs. Unfortunately, we had all our teams basically hit 8-7, 9-6 area. In our division last season. And I agree with what Alata said. The first half of the season was mainly saying, hey, can Majin and Vegeta go elite or just pop off? Right? That was like the main crutch at the moment, at the first half of the season. And then towards the second half, you started seeing Pilaf did these 70k performances. Slug and Debur started to do a little bit more of the weight, right? It wasn't all on Majin Vegeta or bust. And so I think this season they have as Buzz was saying and as Fat Happy was saying, they have a lot more consistency across the board with some of the new pickups, and they look to be more of a evened out team, which is really nice to see.
Yeah, I think got to give credit as my team had one of the best seasons we've ever had, and of the two losses, one was two Royals. So, and Deborah got elite. So obviously,
True.
for us,
Woo!
they're kind of the nightmare. So certainly has been a different setting on my side, not a team I was the most pleasantly anticipating for this because I was like, are they just going to come in and diss me the whole time? I don't know. But
So we do.
in terms of what they're showing off, they are a very humble team to the end.
I mean, given what happened to Deborah in the show, he has an innate hatred of the booze. So it was bound to happen.
Yeah.
Quite fair.
It was canon, so.
Well, is there any other topics you guys kind of want to talk about in terms of the culture of your team or anything? Are you ready to get moving on to who makes up your team?
I think we can move on.
Let's do it.
Alrighty then, let's get talking about their main man. Every team has their main man, and it's quite simple to say. Prince Majin Vegeta probably takes that spot at the throne for them, even though he's only a prince. Just overall, a very strong character. He has a great kit. His Blast 1s and Blast 2s, even his melee, his Rush Blast, obviously being a Vegeta, it gives him a lot, just power there. He's been shown to be very flexible. They put almost every Bataran on him, and he seems to just not care and still do well. So he's got that consistent threat and tribute. And of course, being a Vegeta, that means he has some of the best Rush Blasts anyways. So actually has some bans from that. So that's part of the cons. Obviously, he's banned from equipping Rush boosting Bataras if he has attack plus blue Bataras. He's got long B1 animations, while his Blast 1s are quite strong, being a max power and a stat booster. He likes to do a spiel about he's Prince Majin Vegeta, and yeah, it takes a little bit. And of course, his ult, while being an extremely, good ult in the sense it's an explosive wave, it's got great reference to the show, is a suicide ult that leaves him at 1 HP. So while it's been arguably more used in this testing season, it's still one that no matter what HP he uses at, it takes away HP just about. So it's still a rare one. They don't like to use it very much because at full health, that's a lot of health lost right there. So yeah. Fat Happy, how would you describe kind of your pseudo captain of the team, Prince Majin Vegeta?
Well, I mean, he's Majin Vegeta. He is currently number 1 in the league, and he's carried us to quite a few victories that you might argue we wouldn't have had otherwise. The fight against Muscle, where he just did an Uno reverse card and just sweep the entire team. That was quite exciting. But as has already been said, just an amazing all-around kid. Uh, he's been on the same build in the entirety of last season with just attack +2 and eternal life, and it's only this testing season that we've been experimenting around with different stuff like Savior and Beto Secret Art to make use of his innate power body in max power mode and his max power mode B1 and his pseudo power body B1. It's kind of absurd, to be honest. And on the subject of his ult, he never uses it until he's at like 1 bar anyways. So it's not really that much of a downside when it does like 20k as a base. Well, yeah. Buzz, do you have anything to say?
Something I actually do want to do is give a shout out to Kaio. The AI that we're using on Majin Vegeta has been the same one that he used back on Majins for multiple seasons. The biggest thing that I found when we were building for him last off season is I went back to watch his season 9, season 10 matches, and I found despite being on key builds and super builds, most of his active damage was coming from his melee. So that's just why we decided to throw attack onto him. And it turns out you don't really need to boost these B2s in either key or super, because he's still going to throw out a lot of them. And then every time he goes in for a combo, he's just going to do some massive damage. But we didn't have to experiment with his AI, which helped us a lot last offseason by giving us more time for our other members of the team, because we were able to safely inherit that from his previous team. And yeah, he was just the anchor of our team. We could throw him where we needed him to do. A fun fact, though, we did manage to win every single game he was benched. So we didn't lose any games because he wasn't in. So that was something that was nice
interesting.
last season.
Yeah.
Other people tended to step up when he wasn't on our roster. Do you have any nightmares of Majin Vegeta, Donut?
Yes. Not in the sense of like obviously we were able to handle him in the week 15 match last season, but going into the match, I was definitely afraid, obviously. And I'm looking at Majin Vegeta, or just for Royals, I'm thinking, well, how do I stop Majin Vegeta? How do you stop him? And my answer is simply sell, right? But that doesn't always work, as we've seen in off season multiple times now, which kind of doesn't help me at all going into the next season. But I've seen here like, well, how do you handle a character who can do it all, right? It's really difficult to play around him, and I do like what you said in regards to Buzz's point regarding taking inspiration off of like our old seasons or old teams that they used to be on when we were Super 17 ourselves. So I definitely like using that mindset, saying, hey, what have people done in the past? How can we implement that into what we're doing now? Does it fit within the team structure, etc., right? And on top of that, you mentioned building for what your characters do, not what you want them to do. And I took inspiration off that myself for my own team, based upon your point earlier in the season when you mentioned it. So I definitely am a fan of playing to that style, saying, hey, if my character loves to melee, just let him melee, right? I just boost what he naturally likes to do, and it's working out tremendously for Majin Vegeta for sure. And he's definitely the not the scariest in my opinion, but he's definitely a top 3 threat in the league.
Yeah, I mean, when you just look at it, Majin Vegeta you kind of have to prepare for him. And now that they're giving him Savior and Kibito Secret Arts, he's not going to be a starter guaranteed. So it's like, where is he? Where's he going to pop up? Oh no!
Yeah.
Is he in? Is he not? What's going on? They also
Yeah,
have such a strong supporting cast that you can't even just worry about the one.
Yeah, I think playing Savion is helpful in both a ability to do damage output and as well as a mind game technique, right? Because now, as Dwight said, it used to be either he starts or he finishes. That was literally the only 2 spots he really was in last season. now said, well, I can put him in any 4, any 5 spots. So best of luck, guys. Right?
Yeah, he's just the best character on our team by far.
Mhm. Yep.
Is there anything else you guys want to add on to your captain here? Are you ready to move on to your number or onto a secondary character of your team?
I am ready to move on at least.
I think everybody has a pretty good idea of Majin Vegeta after this last season.
Yeah,
Yes.
his nickname is Majin GG after all, so
Yeah.
that may or may not help. So moving on, they don't really have like a straightforward thing. It's kind of one guy's on top and everybody else is his subjects. And Deborah, Demon King Deborah, I should say, is kind of one of them, being another very strong character for the team. Also one that just has very good B2s. He also has very strong rush blasts that have limited him, and his charged rush blasts actually straight up unblockable. So there's nothing you can do if you get hit. You either have to dodge it or you take the damage. And due to kind of how decent he is all around, he has flexible builds as well. We've also seen him from attack to super to key. Some of his cons, though, he does have a rush ult, and as we've seen, when you have an unblockable charge attack, it knocks him into a spot where they can't be rush ulted, so sometimes it's a nombo, very hard there. His shower breath blast one is, albeit unique and has some great utility, but tends to get him in more trouble than not because it only blocks if it comes straight at his face. If it hits any other part of his body, it ain't blocking it. I can tell you that Bujins certainly feel that pain. And of course, he's banned from rush boosting Patars if he has attack plus blues. So just a very good character overall. Obviously, very unique one from the series. Happy to see he has a forever home still. How did you describe Demon King Deborah, Fat Happy?
Deborah is on. I feel like on paper, Deborah should have been our second strongest character, especially with the kit he has with what's it called, the flame shower breath, or not shower breath, but just flame breath, I suppose. His B2, where it just does so much damage. His other B2, the evil impulse, also just great all around. I just feel like he underperformed slightly compared to what I wanted him to last season. But even then, like he's gonna do a lot better this season, I feel. Last season we kept him on default AI for the entire season, as he was known for just being on default AI previously. But we finally done some AI testing, and I think we've gotten him into a better spot than he was last season. Have any further insights, Buzz?
Yeah, default AI was another one that we had originally inherited. When we were going through last off season, we were looking at the team we had. Deborah and Majin Vegeta seemed pretty safe picks, so they weren't as highly prioritized for AI compared to the rest of our team. And in testing, he was doing really well. I think at the end, or near the end at least, Donut had been keeping track of win rates in tests, and I think Deborah was sitting around a 60 to 70% win rate in tests he was showing up at. A lot of people in the league was testing against him. And so we weren't really that worried about him going into the season. At the beginning, we were having issues with him. After Image Strike is a phenomenal tool to be able to use, but it would also end up crippling him in certain scenarios. And then he wouldn't be getting off enough B2s to keep his damage consistency up. I think his lowest week was against Cinema. The map just stopped everything that he was doing, and I think he only did 5,000 damage. So really coming into this off season, we're happy that he got an elite last season. It proved that default AI wasn't necessarily broken, but we wanted to see a more consistent output from him. So that's really what we're looking for in our tests and scrutinizing just to see on average which Deborah could do the best. And that's really where we landed with him. I think we're happy sort of where he is now. We're still looking and tweaking a little bit, but we're pretty content with where he is right now. Donut, any other thoughts?
Sure, yeah. And go back onto the off-season test that Buzz mentioned on that 70% win ratio. Most of those matches, like 131 of those matches, was against Pilaf. And Pilaf didn't fare too hot, let's say that much. And so that kind of inflated his numbers slightly. But still, he did very well against most of the other characters as well that tested against him. I find it interesting that you brought up the idea of maps in regards to cinema. I noticed that you have been recently testing on HTC, I believe. You've been testing a few times on there. And funny enough, when the bow went Elite, was on HTC, Hyperbolic Time Chamber. And are you looking at doing a map swap, or are you looking for the similar maps of that style where it's a more flat land, more barren, and not as much in the way to kind of help the bow out?
Well, part of it is that last season the Hyperbolic Time Chamber was our home map.
Oh, was it? I thought it was on Boost.
Yeah.
Oh,
No, no,
Boost.
no.
My bad. My bad.
No, so good. No, but Hyperbolic Time Chamber was our home map last season, and it's
Oh, yeah,
only this where Buzz immediately bid all our Xenia. That was amazing. But this season we've been testing on other maps. But as you said, we've been testing mostly on Frieza Ship,
Yeah.
because we have noticed that a lot of our characters either like knocking down our opponents before throwing out a B2, or like the board just having his B2s be blocked by terrain in general. It just helps having a clear stage.
Yeah. I do
And so-
know that, was it? That the HTC is probably going to be the highest contested map in the pool. More likely, right? So
Yeah.
with the what we'll get to later, the loan you guys did, that puts you at somewhat disadvantage. So maybe the Frieza ship is the way to go, right?
Yeah, we have different maps in mind that
Sure.
we can bid for if we don't end up getting either Frieza ship or HTC. But yeah, we have put thought into the maps that we're testing.
Fair enough.
Yeah, some teams have that as something that could be seen as an advantage or disadvantage. So testing, figuring all that out is another part. It's kind of the sixth character is your map. And make sure the map appeases the needs of the team. Unless you're androids, then nobody likes you because everybody hates playing on that map.
Hey, water's great.
I
Everyone
digress.
loves
You guys ready to move on to your third man? Your third returning man, I should say.
Yep.
I'll assume that's a yep from Buzz as well. Moving on
Yes,
to
sorry.
Lord Slug. A very fun cinema villain here. Surprisingly, was a lot better than Devora this last season, really proving himself, doing quite well. Has some pretty good pros to him. He has Sweep the Legs, the sweeping I-beam, which is obviously on many of the spammers been a very strong B2. He has a 2-bar B2 and finger beam that he actually connects with a pretty good amount, kind of like Tien's Dodon Ray. And just overall, he's been a lot more consistent than I think people anticipated. He just kind of gets in there, does his job, and gets out. Though he does have a few cons. While he does get to be like a true Namekian with the giant form, he unfortunately that makes him just very easy to be taken out. Since he loves doing it on his lost bar, sometimes against fellow spammers, as we've seen many a time against characters like 17, that just makes it a little too easy to eat one energy ball and die, because it's a lot harder to dodge it. Obviously, in both forms, he has just a little bit slower melee, maybe not as fast as it needs to be to push people off, and he's kind of stuck on being a spamming build currently. While they have indeed tested other stuff, due to the kind of awkward melee, it does kind of force him to be either tank or spam. So a little bit stuck in a position, but not a bad position, and I don't think they would ever diss him. I think he's been a fantastic character. So Fat Happy, you want to describe your Jolly Green Giant here?
Yeah. Honestly, Slug is probably my favorite character on the team to watch when he fights. because unlike Majin, Vegeta, and Deborah, he doesn't feel he's not blatantly great just when you look at their kit. And unlike Mecha Frieza and Pilaf, he didn't feel like he was outright bad either. He felt like he was our most standard character on our roster. I feel like at the start of the season, honestly, having the I-beam felt like more of a detriment. I feel like the perception on the whole sweep. I feel like because of Garlic Sweep the Leg Jr., I suppose, the perception that the I-beams are bad has swapped, and now it's suddenly a good thing. And honestly, towards the end of the season, when we finally swapped him off of his defense build onto a spam build, he started doing really, really well. I think ever since we swapped him to a spam build, he had a single week where he went below 30k, and then every other week all the other weeks he did 50k plus. Ever since we changed his build, so that was quite nice to see, honestly. He tends to, once he transforms, he almost always jumps back, and he has that sweet explosive wave. So when he's on a spam build with indignation, that's just a free 10k right there, and that just feels super good. And honestly, it's just very fun to see this big green man slap people around. I don't know. How do you feel about it, Buzz?
So with Slug last season, going into the season, I actually had him pegged as our second best character. In early sort of league exhibition, I think 5v5s they were, where we fought against the hybrids. He had done really, really well for us in testing 4v4s. He was doing really good, and even preseason, he was really pegged to be our second best. And for the first part of the season, it didn't quite translate over. But by the end there, like Fat Appy said, he just really started picking it up when we put him on the key build, getting his damage in. And I think he's going to be very good for us this coming season. I'm interested to see really how our roster shakes up, because I feel like we've now got multiple contenders for second best on the roster. We'll talk about another one of them in a bit here, but I think Slug has really picked it up, and I don't know if people are quite going to be expecting it or not when they fight him, just how much he's actually going to output for us. With that, do you want to talk about the awesome interactions between Giant Slug and Android 19 there, Donut?
I prefer not to, but we'll go into it a little bit. Yeah, so as was alluding to, Slug is a problem. He is a problem for me. Like, in all accounts, he's an issue. He's definitely one I have to heavily plan for when I'm looking at him, mainly because of the giant form. Right, he shuts down 16 and 19 in regards to both grabs there, and so I'm like, well, if he does giant and 19's out, it's a feels bad man for that one. But obviously, to the counterpoint, we have 17 there to handle him slightly better when he goes giant. But yeah, so Slug here, obviously very consistent, very like Mr. Take Your Man type thing going on. He's very spam heavy, as I was saying. He has such great B2s, just all around great character. I am very curious to see how high his ceiling can get. I think it's not hit there yet. But on the right AI or right setup in regards to Patara, I think he can definitely hit to a consistent like 50, 60 type K area. For sure, going into next season.
So, yeah, certainly a character. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, but I will say that he kind of feels like our team's version of a character like King Vegeta, who to me feels like Kaiju's just like standard good character that does well, takes his man, and is just solid. Also, in terms of the fact that Slug is the only character on our team that actually loves tagging, especially now that we've traded Mecha away. with him standing at the top with 8 trades, with the second highest being Mecha with 4. Sorry, not trades, tags.
That's
And on top of that, he was the character in the league with the second highest spam rate, only topped by Garlic Jr.
of course.
So he has shown stats wise that he will do way better next season. We can promise that now that we've changed his build.
Yeah, I think he's certainly a character that has shown he's always ready to go, and he will keep being ready. And it's good to have some of those just consistent members to help fill out your roster, and especially with the message you guys mentioned earlier of looking to be a consistent team going into this next season. It's nice to have one kind of already settled that way. So makes it to where I don't think you guys have had to do much testing with Lord Slug yet, since he's been kind of just doing his thing.
We haven't really had to do much testing because I mentioned that we changed his build, but I meant compared to the start of last season. But there's been a bunch of teams that have tested against us. And I know GT for the last several tests have just been testing against Slug and TN, testing Sin and Pan specifically. So there's been plenty of Slug to watch, and he's been performing great, honestly, in those tests.
Was he running Eternal Life in those tests, or just his newer build?
His current build is just all spam, all the key Batara with Dende Sealing, basically. So key +2, launcher support, fighting spirit, indignation, Dende Sealing. So he is built for spam now, and that is all he does.
Yeah, certainly. Well, is there anything else you guys have on your Jolly Green Giant here, Lord Slug, or should we get on to the new members that have been joining you guys this season?
On to our new blood.
Alright.
Let's get it.
So this one's a contentious topic. Staff still working on if this should be allowed. Is Lord Baby Vegeta. Took quite a bit of convincing until someone pulled up one clip from the show, which basically cleared all of the issues. But we now have the Lord himself, the Tuffle King reincarnated, Lord Baby Vegeta, and got, I believe it was loaned with GT for Pilaf. So a new addition will make for a lot of interesting changes this next season in terms of how the team will function. And as we can see in the pros and cons here, he's a very strong all-rounder, has good B2s, has very good melee. He can transform, that was changed last season, all the way up to Great Ape, but he must start as Super Baby 1, which is the form you see in the top right. He's a very consistent character. He's also very diverse in how you can kind of approach him. So his cons, though, is, as I said, he must start Super Baby 1 or base, so he has to transform his way to Super Baby 2 or Great Ape. He does seem to be a character, especially if you want those transformations, that relies on healing Pataras, so more often than not, he ends up with Eternal Life, just so he can go longer, but there have been other builds with Dendes just to keep him around. And I think the worst and probably the biggest sin is he steals moves, but unlike Cell, he doesn't know the names of them. So quite awkward when watching him fight. He actually has no idea what he's doing. He just yells out names while throwing stuff. So quite unforgivable for some people. But I guess in Royalty, you can call whatever you want. So how would you describe your pickup here of Lord Baby Vegeta, Fat Happy?
Well, when you compare him to Pilaf at face value, that is an amazing loan we made. Even though it did cost us 8 zenny, which is a heck of a lot. But he's just a good all-round character. He's got the really good melee. He's got those good B2s. His rush blasts aren't quite Vegeta status, but they're still up there, in my opinion. And his B1s are also pretty good, with him having after image and I believe it's high tension. So he just does well on almost any build. He also did pretty well last season in terms of stats, and so we have builds to fall back on if what we're testing doesn't work out. But otherwise, we actually think we've improved him a bit with our recent testing on key rather than defense. The only sad part is we've taken him off of Dragon Spirit, So the likelihood of seeing the ape has gone down, which is the main downside to me, honestly. Not getting to see the big golden monkey. So, how do you feel about it, Buzz?
I think right under everybody noses, we cut all the way in line and grabbed our free agent without any contention, and we just don't know how much we spent for him yet. That'll depend on who we actually pick up. But now, when I was looking at the loan for him, Pilaf was still great for us at the end of last season. So I wasn't really worried about Pilaf, but what I was thinking of is comparing taking this loan for Baby versus who we'd realistically be in line for as a free agent. And I feel like Baby, you can't really ask for a better free agent class character to have. So that's how I see grabbing him. And as an actual fighter, he just looks really cool. I do hope we can get to see some Ape in the main season, even if just rarely on one of his newer builds. I think he's all around a great pickup for us for this season. And while we're on this specific loan, I do want to dip in a bit into Pilaf because he's who we loaned away. I still believe Pilaf is very good, and we'll be more than happy to have him back next season. But when you're looking at baby Vegeta, it's hard to pass that up. It's hard to say, no, actually, we don't want to use him for a season. So we're pretty happy with the loan. Anything else anyone else wants to add on to this? Any further questions about being one of the few teams to put out a loan?
Yeah, I mean, Donut, how did you feel seeing the loan come in? Because Pilaf, as we said, was a very strong character, and Vegeta, a strong character, or baby Vegeta for GT. Was it a bit surprising?
Oh yeah, definitely surprising. When I first heard the news, I was like, wow, Royals are a huge contender for first place right now. As soon as they dropped Pilaf. Not saying Pilaf's a bad character, just in comparison to Baby, Baby is a whole nother level, right? I think Baby has a ability to get to that same area as other members like Cell or like Majin Vegeta. I think he has the ability to hit that much. It's just a matter of, finagling with his kit and his AIs and making it to where he can get to that output. But he definitely has that high ceiling, especially with the transformations, which he gets key back from, so he can spam out some more B2s. It's all just really nice stuff. My question would be for Baby, is there a certain idea of what you want him to be as in regards to a role in your team? In regards to, I want him to be more of a spammer, I want him to be more of just a maybe lower key but higher B2 damage, or how do you want to what do you call it, utilize him?
Currently, we have him pegged a bit as an all-rounder,
Okay.
to be honest, where he does well on almost anything you put on him, whether it's defense, attack, or key. And he's, because of the changes we've made to build, we currently don't really have a good contender for who should have eternal life. Given the fact that we have Majin Vegeta now testing on his KSA build with Dende's healing. So there's not really space, and Lord Slug with launcher support and Dende's healing also. So there's not really space on anyone else to have eternal life on. So he's kind of stuck on that Patara as just like a good all-rounder. And you can put anything on him and he'll do well, probably.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah, I definitely think with this pickup, Royals, in my opinion, have moved from like a top 8 team to now a top 14. Without doubt.
Yeah,
That is
certainly.
great to hear.
Certainly is a character that people are quite terrified of due to having such a standout season this last season, and obviously he kind of has nowhere to go but up since he's had the transformation limits removed. So lots of potential with him. Obviously, a lot of people expecting to see him do some crazy stuff, and obviously a very good pickup for you guys. So seems like a very exciting character to mess around with.
He's very exciting to watch fight. He's fun to watch. So
Yeah. I think the biggest takeaway is really that he monkey, and that's just gonna go really far this season. I mentioned earlier on in the cast I was a former Saiyans coach. I still love apes, and this one's a bit farther out of reach. It's not just one transformation away; it's two at the very least, depending on what form we start him in. But it is nice to kind of have that back on the team, if even for a season, and we're going to try to make the most out of him.
Yeah, I think he's. I mean, I will say teams are both terrified of his monkey, but I find it hypocritical that he wants to kill all monkeys yet turns into a monkey. So, to each their own. It's a royal monkey at least. Well, are you guys ready to move on to the final character, the trade you guys have done actually?
yeah, we can
yeah.
move on from the golden monkey.
Let's
Let's
move on to
go.
the character that Donut's probably most excited for on your guys' team is
Yeah.
Lord Metacooler. So, very strong character, very consistent character. Maybe not as high of a ceiling as the other characters on the team, but he's certainly one that kind of does. He's a much more along the lines that Slug has, where he kind of does his base stuff, and that's about all you need. So going real quick through some of his pros, he's an android, so he's a passive charger. He never has to actively charge; it just his key regenerates. He's a tank exemplar. When you look at a true tank character, a lot of people think of Lord Metacooler. He does it quite well. Obviously, he's a shiny metal coat. Who doesn't like that? And for an ult, he has Supernova, which is one of the larger kind of ball ults. So he actually does manage to utilize it, and I believe they have Savior on him now, so he gets a lot more likely chance to use it. So though he does have some cons, of course, being he kind of has subpar B2s. Lock on doesn't actually lock on, it just shoots an orb in a straight line wherever he starts it so they can easily fly away. And then his scatter finger beam, while is devastating at close range, if they're anything further than, I don't know, 5 yards, it kind of just misses and does subpar damage. So just unfortunate, but still usable. Both still hit quite a bit. But due to kind of not being able to actively charge, he relies a lot on melee, and doing a tank means his melee is maybe left as a lower stat, so it leaves him to be a little inconsistent in dealing his damage. And of course, probably the saddest part about him is of the two forms they could have picked to make him meta, they picked his base. So we could have had final form Metacooler, so base form Sag. Yeah, how would you describe him, Fat Happy? Obviously, he's kind of just a solid pickup overall, isn't he?
Yeah, the main reason why we're happy with the trade is that Mecha was kind of the high roll character of the century. He the first week he came in 90k just spamming his supernova for days, and then other weeks he just did nothing, like absolutely nothing. So Mecha was just too inconsistent for our taste. Meta, on the other hand, is like very consistent. He rarely completely breaks, but he also doesn't have the same highs as someone like Mecha. But I must admit, like I like the finger blitz barrage, but the lock on buster, oh my god! Every time he decides to use that B2, I die a little inside because it hits like 1 in 10 shots. It's awful. It is
It's
truly
not.
terrible. So it is probably down there amongst the worst of the B2s in this entire game. Otherwise, we did have him on Savior in testing, but that was mainly because of the fact that he has the giant ball, the supernova. But honestly, on the AIs that so far at least I have liked a lot. I'm not sure about Buzz, but the AIs I have preferred, he doesn't really like throwing out the supernova. So I've started testing him without it. Because if he's not gonna ult, then why have him on Savior at all? Otherwise, trying to test him on attack exactly for the reason mentioned earlier that he relies a lot on melee. So trying to test him on attack +1, just to see if we can make him give him more consistent numbers. But it's up in the air if he's going to end up as a tank or an attack build right now. What about you, Buzz? What are your thoughts?
So I believe this was the first actual completed straight up trade under the trade system that was added. And I think one of the things that has a lot of teams hesitant to do it is when something's permanent like this, one team inherently is giving up a little bit of space, and most teams don't want to do that. Like, you don't want to lose a bit of talent just to get a trade to go through. But when we were weighing our options, personally, I'll still believe we were the ones that were trading down a little bit, just because I do believe Mecha Frieza has a much higher ceiling. But when I was looking at our team and what our team really needed, we don't need Mecha Frieza's ceilings. We need a nice, consistent anchor for our team. Another member that I don't need to worry about whether or not he's going to throw multiple or even a single ultimate out, that he's going to go do his thing. So we are really trading for consistency. And I think this is the big move that really showed that. Another thing is with a lot of the rest of our team, with Slug, Majin, Vegeta, Baby, Dabura, all of them can cover spam roles if we need to. So there's not as much flexibility we have for Mecha Frieza. We can put him in still unclashing roles or prioritize stuff for him, but we don't really want to have to be doing too many more coin flips with him. And Cooler just fits a different role on the team. He can either hold some tank, we can give him a bit of melee, he can hold some android Pataras if we need him to.
Mm-hmm.
Just in general, I think he fits our team a lot better, that we're going to come out on the higher end of the trade in the end. But I do think, as an in general thing, the reason why teams aren't trading left and right is anytime you're trading two characters, one team is getting the slightly worse deal, and that team needs to be okay with it for another reason. And I think we found that exact opportunity, that overall as a character, per character, I think I can see in the end Mecha Frieza doing better than him over time. But I think on our team specifically, Cooler is going to be a lot better of a pickup for us long term.
Yeah, certainly could see it as trading a pop-off character for maybe more of a stable character. So while Mecha Frieza could potentially carry a week, a lot harder than Meta could, Meta will be the take his man, do his job kind of character. So it's a coin flip. You never know. Obviously, when a character does bad, they do bad. It doesn't matter. So it's looking at the pros they add to a team comp. As Donut would say, no, I'm joking.
Yeah. End that real quick. Yeah, so I think Buzz said it best there, that the why people are hesitant to trade and why you guys went with Metacooler, and I feel that Meta fits your team better, in my opinion. Did you have Baby already, who can do the pop off? You have Majin, GG, who can always do the pop off. So you don't need that. You already have that role solidified twofold, right? So you don't need any of that. You just need stable, and that's exactly what you get. Exactly what you get. The B2s are obviously awful, but he doesn't actually need those to perform well, which is really nice, right? When you have a character who doesn't have to rely on B2s to do his job, it means that when they do it, it's just extra bonus, right? Just gravy at that point.
I will say on that point that I actually really like Finger Boots Barrage, just because it's guaranteed damage. And there is a Cooler, or Metacooler, probably also actual Cooler, has this thing in their melee combos where they like doing this knee that flips the opponent into the air. And for some reason, that is the one part of his combo that everyone loves to dodge out of. So he has his small quirks that make his melee slightly inconsistent on occasion. But to build upon what Buzz said earlier about him just fitting our team better, that is very, very true. Especially now that we've traded away loaned away Pilaf for this season. So a lot of the defense Potara as well as the Clash Potara that were on Pilaf also fit very well on Metacooler, given that he's similarly an android. So he just having Metacooler on our team just opens up a lot of build options for the rest of them.
Yeah, certainly is nice that even though Pilaf and Baby don't quite use the same Pataras, you did end up getting a character replace kind of what Pilaf did. So, and Meta being very flexible in positioning like Pilaf was, and seeing as how he's not going to be a savior user, means he could be anywhere in the lineup. So certainly he adds a lot more than he subtracts. So even though maybe his power level, as Buzz said, is not the same, he's still a character that kind of fills out the team in another way. You know, he's still a puzzle piece that fits in and gets the job done. So, is there anything else you guys would like to talk about on Lord Metacooler then?
His alternate costume, the strawberry pink, is far superior. That's all I gotta say.
I think I'm very looking forward to how we finish him. We're still testing him out. We still have decisions we have to make. We're definitely not finished with him, whereas some of our other characters, like, we could throw into the main season right now pretty confidently. We're still looking at all of Cooler's options, but it's looking good.
Yeah, what Buzz said is true. He is currently our main testing target, and he is being tested extensively on our team. So
I think every team has that character they're really trying to nail down their position, though. So at least he's a character you can, put something on right now and throw him into the fire if need. But yeah, getting all the kinks worked out can be some time, and unfortunately for him, he's made of hard metal, so it's a little harder. You have to heat up the metal to the right temperature, then bang on it, and then you have to make sure it's good. When it cools down, it changes shape again. Just a huge, long, annoying process. So, little metalwork humor there. Well, are you guys ready to kind of talk about maybe your master list? What makes you guys such an expansive and interesting team here?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Let's do it.
So, obviously, they're a team that can actually do tons and tons and tons of trades and loans and such. It's what makes Royals a very interesting team. It's also what's funny of how expansive they can be due to just how many Royal characters there are. So just going down the list, just off Cold Kingdom, these are all characters they could have traded for with Mecha Frieza. They could have traded for Lord Cooler, they could have traded for Frieza, they could have traded for King Cold. Those are all on Cold Kingdom that could have been done there. Obviously, all the Vegetas are available to them. So Scouter Vegeta, Mid Vegeta, and Vegeta, Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta being on, funny enough, spread around the league with Kaiju, ED, Resurrect Warriors, and GT. Obviously, they have Majin Vegeta, so they have one of the base Vegetas down. There's Demon King Piccolo from Namek, a little harder of a grab to get, but having Slug means that they do have a literal straight trade as well. King Vegeta, obviously another very strong character, and now that they have Baby, if they get him permanently, he's a much more feasible character. Lord Garlic Jr., a very, strong character in his own right. As said before, he kind of made Sweep the Leg a thing again, and now that they have Meta, they have a trade with Cinema, so that's another option down the line. And then, of course, Lord Mecha Frieza, who they recently traded Metacooler for Cold Kingdom, and Emperor Pilaf, who's currently loaned out to GT. So, depending on how the season goes, a lot of that could change, blah, 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 this, blah, 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 that. But overall, I mean, that's a lot of characters. There's a lot of flexibility, and with their current roster, a lot of them are actually options for them if they choose to go that route. So, will be very interesting to see how the team changes over time, because they have the ability to really kind of, if other teams are open to it, make those changes. So I guess is there any standouts here, characters you guys maybe would A, wish to be on the team, or B, are maybe looking for down the line? Start with you, Fat Happy.
I mean, we've talked a lot about different trades we could have done. Don't want to give any teams any good ideas now, right? But we discussed extensively. We've had discussions about whether or not we should trade Slug away because of his previous seasons, like prior to the one we just had, his performances in those. So we've discussed extensively whether or not Slug was worth keeping on the team. Obviously, we traded Mecha away because of the reasons we've already discussed. But yeah, there's so many good characters on our master list, which makes it such a shame that we're master list locked right now. I believe, in terms of characters that we can just pick up without having to do a trade or a loan. There's nobody that's currently just open to get because everyone is so good. But yeah, I mean, honestly, almost any of the characters currently on screen, and even the ones that haven't been mentioned, all of them are good. So I honestly, the worst of all the royalty in the league at the start of last season was probably Pilaf. And even now, Pilaf is good. So it's probably Mecha now. And even Mecha isn't that bad. So we have choices.
Yeah, Buzz, are there any of the, I guess following up on that, what would be your response to the master list members that you either would like down the line or maybe could see as potentially being traded here at some point?
So something that he mentioned, we were looking at potentially moving Slug, but I think the good thing when we were looking at any of our trades or loan options, I don't see a single character on this master list that I would be upset with having on our team. Like, we don't have any Giroux, we don't have any, like, our Giroux was Pilaf, and I feel like we solved Pilaf to where we're not crying every time he goes out onto the field. So I think realistically, in any trade option that we have, it's something to legitimately consider, because pretty much all these characters have something that they could give back in a trade in that. And there are some that I don't see ever moving. I think it would take multiple seasons of Garlic Jr. doing really bad, which I don't quite see happening before Cinema wants to move him. And there's other characters that I can see more likely, especially if some of our characters pick up, they might start picking up interest from some of these other teams. I think there's a lot of cool characters we could work with. A bunch that I wouldn't mind working with, like either other Vegetas or King Vegeta, King Piccolo. Those are all characters that I liked from the show or from my previous teams that I was on. But realistically, I really like what our master list is. And there's options for slight expansions in the case if mods come in the future. I don't think we're as expansive in that category as like Sentai is. I think Sentai is really the hot seat of future modded characters for like opportunity to pick someone up. But there are options in the future that could happen that are cool. But realistically, I think we have a really strong master list.
Yeah, I was gonna say you talked about Lord Slug a lot, and you know who's someone that you could definitely probably get based off our Kaiju podcast was maybe trading for King Vegeta at some point. He's kind of one of their characters that they're getting a little flustered with trying to build. While they do still love him and they cherish him quite well, he is certainly a character I could see within the next season, maybe depending on how things turn out. Since Slug goes big, so he does fit Kaiju, and he is on Kaiju's master list. So potentially another way for both teams to kind of feel, better. They can get more out of it. So
it's kind of funny because I remember last season, I think the character that Slug tested against the most last season was literally King Vegeta, because they feel very similar. They feel kind of similar, to be honest. So
yeah, for our beginning testing of Slug, I quite literally just took my philosophy of how I built 8 characters on my time on the Saiyans. I got the Saiyans to a pretty good place with the rest of our team. Like we put in some good work on that team together before for season 10 we got to a good first place. So I was pretty confident in that, and I saw Slug as just a hairless monkey. That's actually a slug. So my beginning philosophies was building him more like if I was building Turles or more specifically King Vegeta. So I definitely wouldn't mind getting one of my old teammates back, but we'll see how it goes. I think Slug is one of those people that I definitely wouldn't mind trading away, but I'd just as much be perfectly happy keeping him on the team because I do think he's really good. So, and I feel that way about most of the trades that we have available. That there's some characters that could be fun to build with, get back, but if those trades were rejected, I'm just as happy keeping who we currently have.
Yeah, on that point, like I've already said that Slug is probably my favorite character to watch on the team. But to be honest, I love so many of the characters that are on our mess list, like from the show or whatnot, that everything's up in the air for almost every character except Majin Vegeta. He's never going.
All right, so we are picking up Majin Vegeta next season. Good to know.
Love it.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Majin
want
Vegeta.
Lord Evil Boo? Sounds good to me.
Yep.
Majin Vegeta
I'm
was the
a,
main reason.
We translated as grunt. It said Lord Evil Boo. So
I'm afraid I'm gonna have to shut down your dreams right there.
Majin King Evil Boo. There you go.
Yeah.
Whatever
Definitely.
title.
Majin Vegeta was the main reason I originally went over to Royals when I saw at the beginning of this league's boot up and the initial rosters were shown off, and I not to drag on you guys or anything, but when we saw the initial Bujin's roster, I think that put a lot of fear into the community when we saw Majin Vegeta there. So that
Yeah.
kind of was one of the reasons why I'm like, I'm going to go over to Royals because there's a chance that they'll have him as an option. And it did end up happening. So I was
It did.
quite happy with that. But I think Majin Vegeta is the one character that, as long as I'm on that team, he can go multiple seasons where he does absolutely nothing. I still won't want to get rid of him. I'll start trying to build a style of the strong Halo builds on him to just
Hell yeah.
get him to explode. Because if there's nothing else he can do for us, we'll make him explode. I don't see him going in. Besides that,
we've already tested super builds on him, and he still does pretty well. So everything's up in the air.
yeah. So besides him, I think if other teams are listening and scheming, go ahead and throw offers our way. Maybe not this season. I think we're pretty good with where we are now, but think about it for next season. Just don't bother with Majin Vegeta. He's not going in.
Yeah, that is exactly the sentiment we should be sending. So
Well, you never know. If Cold Kingdom may want meta back, and you never know if they have a different offer, a different character, seeing as how a good chunk of their Cooler, Frieza, and King Cold also being royalty. So, yeah, certainly lots out there. Never know. Maybe Demon King Piccolo for Slug. Maybe, as we said, Garlic for meta. There's so many options. Also, Slug can be traded to several teams actually. So
True.
he's a very flexible unit that you guys may hold on to for some good Zenny ups at some point here. So we'll see.
Yeah, I feel another kind of thing to go back to the Metacooler. The fact that he is a trade option with Cinema does open up other routes as well. Because even if Garlic himself won't move, three-way trades, I believe, still can be a thing as long as it's all direct in the end. And if they're not, I'll petition them to be.
Oh yeah, no, three-way trades are still allowed, so you guys can still do that.
Yeah.
So there's definitely still opportunities for us to move that. I think the current roster we have is definitely flexible going into the future, and I'm quite happy with it.
I mean, other than Meta is, I believe he's also on Android's master list. Is that correct, Donut?
Yeah. I was very sad when I heard the news that he'll be going to Royals.
Yeah, very hard
that's
for
right.
him to trade for it, unfortunately.
And Slug is also on Cinema's master list. So
Mhm.
we have a lot of options when it comes to trades. That is
Yeah,
true.
what is Will Mod in Lloyd Super 17? Yep. What?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can we get Lord Perfect Cell?
Ah,
For meta?
I don't know about that
Hey,
one. I know
Dragon
that
Ball
one.
Super is not finished.
Mm.
So they might adapt more things from GT. We may get a
So
big forehead 17 that's suddenly a king of some random planet. You never know.
Hell yeah.
fantastic.
I'm king of the
Fantastic.
animals.
King of the Zoo.
As long as he calls himself royalty, that's what all that
Yep.
matters.
That's all I have to do.
Well, with that, is there any final remarks you guys have, or are we good on the royal subject?
I think we've gotten one of the, in my own opinion, coolest thematics in the league. I think we're like a really strong team now that we've done our trades and loans, and I'm looking forward to going into the next season as the new coach.
Hell yeah.
I think we're going to have a really good season coming up. We definitely pushed it to where not making playoffs before, we not only want to make playoffs now, but we want to go far into them. I think we set up our team in a good way for that too. Last season, we took it more as a testing season where we were still competing. We weren't doing anything completely unfounded where we wanted to like, oh, it doesn't matter. We're just testing. We were competing last season, so it was unfortunate when we couldn't sneak in playoffs at the end. But this season, this is going to be Royals. You're going to be seeing Royals with a strong free agent of Baby, and I think we're going to tear some stuff up.
So yeah, if you heard it here first. If you're enjoying a team based around royalty and kind of egonism, the team, then you have a strong one here. Everybody very much sees themselves as very high end, character-wise, that is. Staff-wise, they are very much humble when it comes down to it. So
Yes.
with that, there's, as always, links to the Discord, to the website, to the Twitter. All can give you information on teams, on events, on when everything's going on, including more information on just the season, the podcast, all of that. So if you'd like to follow up on those, you can keep an eye. Obviously, you can also subscribe, hit the bell icon, like, do whatever. Comment down below what you maybe your favorite character of this team is, or who maybe you hope for them to pick up one day. And with that, this has been the Capsule Cast. I'm your host, DoorGuard.
I'm doing it.
I'm fat happy.
And I'm Buzz.
Have a great weekend, guys.